You are now tuned into the sounds of Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
Riding that laid back, feeling smooth. Looking for just a little something to get into. Tired of the same old scene.
Something different, if you know what I mean.
So when I saw you, there was no in between. You came up to me like something from out of my dreams. A woman from the pages of a magazine. Deep inside my heart you scream. I can't understand. Hey, just wanna hold you, hey baby. How you do the things I'm watching you do. All we're in is love. Just wanna make some love. All I wanna do, my girl, is dance with you. Now we're in this club. Your cheek pressed to my face. Trying not to lose control, but I ain't got no time to waste. Cause I came up in the club,
Standing face to face with perfection.
and it would be your body all over my body.
This is what I'm thinking of.
Hey, woo, I can understand. I can understand.
You are now tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that is on all the time, anytime. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Nathan Snell.
And as always, thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, Nathan Snell of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. This is episode number 398 of the podcast. In this episode, we are recapping the OT thriller in Cincinnati as the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals had a wonderful game this past Sunday. Before we get into that, there's a few things I want to say up front. I first want to send my thoughts and prayers for those to stay safe in Florida as Hurricane Milton has now made its landfall. Last time I remember seeing correctly, it's a Category 3. But just thinking about those down there, and I have a couple friends that have some family down there, so just thinking of them, just praying for the safety, and I'm hoping that this storm shall pass. I know this has kind of been an interesting start to hurricane season, so again, just thinking about those down in Florida, and just stay safe, and my thoughts and prayers are with you. Also, we are close to episode number 400 of the podcast. The WNBA Finals is here after the Connecticut Sun painfully lost Game 5. As I'm recording this video, tomorrow is their exit interview. Everybody will be made available, including Stephanie White. I will have that posted on the YouTube channel. As far as WNBA Finals preview goes, whatever happens, that will conclude the one mind, one goal series. I will most likely do that by myself. Myself, I have not reached out to Brendan Potts about joining me on that episode, but need to do a preview. And then whatever happens, that'll conclude the series. And then we're also getting ready for a WNBA mock draft. This will be our 1.0. My mock draft has been, for the most part, it's changed, especially how this last round of the playoffs went. And then it's transitioned to college basketball. The Maryland Lady Terrapins basketball season starting soon. So you'll see a lot of Maryland Terrapins basketball on the channel for sure. Hoping to have a couple of special guests here on the podcast. You'll see those very soon. But that's pretty much it. On episode 399, that is the Washington Commanders versus those Cleveland Brownies. As we also, the Commanders had a big win against them. And that's pretty much it. I would like to thank Sean Spencer and Will Kramer for inviting me on Washington Football Weekly. It was good to chop it up with those guys. Haven't spoke to them in quite some time collaboratively. So it was good to talk on them. Shout out to them. Check them out. Washington Football Weekly, part of Let's Talk Football family. Also, too, I will leave all the links to Team NBS Media, as I am officially part of their media as well. Thank you for that. Shout out to Joe. Maryland Sports Blog, I'm still with them. You'll still get Maryland content, still with the Washington Mystics. I apologize for the content wasn't consistent, but I guarantee you that this will be a good turnaround for myself and for MarylandSportsBlog.com.
Yeah!
So I'll leave all those links in the description below. Lastly, I would like to thank Elena Coates for joining me. It was a great interview. Check that out if you hadn't already. It was a great conversation. Had a couple great laughs. And just follow her. Just check it out if you're not already. I encourage you. It was a great interview. And much appreciative of that. Now, that's not for me blabbering, because you came here for the meat and potatoes of what's been going on. Week 5. The Baltimore Ravens, last 2 games, it's starting to come together. If you followed me, the first 2 weeks of the season, I said this team is still finding and gelling together. There's still some questions that I have. My apologies. That I'm not quite all there yet with them, and I'm explaining what I mean by that. By week 5, week 6, you should kind of know who your team is. And when you looked at both teams, obviously, Lamar versus Joe Burrow. For me, I look at this as, one, it's a divisional rival, but also, 2, it's kind of a tone setter. When you do look at kind of how the Bengals have looked, personally, I just think they just don't have the pieces. I think Cincinnati, you can for so long to depend on Joe Burrow's arm, but when it comes to it, your defense has got to get stops. And let's just really get into the takeaways. The final score, ladies and gentlemen, the Baltimore Ravens defeated the Cincinnati Bengals in overtime, 41-38.
That's what I'm talking about. This shit means something to me, man.
You know, the one thing when you looked at the final stat line, one thing would tell you no one expected the game to be like this. Lamar threw for 348 yards, 4 touchdowns, 55 yards on 12 carries. He's 9-1 against Cincinnati. And you look at Joe Burrow. I mean, he did throw the game-winning interception, but to kind of see that this is a back-and-forth game, I really kind of have to start with on the negative. My concern is our defense. We have to be better at not allowing them to hold the ball. I mean, for the entire third quarter, Cincinnati, for the most part, dominated. I mean, they held the ball in the third quarter for 12 minutes and 47 seconds compared to our 2 minutes and 13 seconds.
Mm-hmm. I can't defend that. What do you want me to say to that?
We really have to be better. I thought I'm a little concerned on the pass rush. I thought it would have gotten better. I haven't seen anything that makes me wow this defense. Now, in fairness, Mike McDonald took him like 4 or 5 weeks to straighten it up, and he got better. But I'm seeing a pattern. Jamar Chase had a field day, 10 catches, 193 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That can't happen. The secondary, it is going to be something if you don't adjust it. Now, again, that falls on Zach Orr. Now, I'm going to say this. I'm being honest. I think we can be. That's what the whole point of. There's a difference when you're moved. I'll use a head coach for an example. When you're from that number 2 spot to the number 1 spot, everybody's not built to be a defensive coordinator. I'm not sold on him right now as defense coordinator. I mean, Zach Orr, Chris Hewitt, they're going to need to really look at the tape, because you cannot tell me, especially a pass defense that is 32nd and was honestly coming into the game was 29th against Cincy. Did a good job shutting down Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. But to come out and let Joe Burrow do what he did, 30 or 39, 390, almost 400 yards in passing, I truly have a problem. Now, I sat here at the beginning of the season, I was sitting here on the defense, who's the pass rush, who's replacing Jadeveon Clowney's sack production. The secondary is not looking all that great. I mean, I'm watching Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson. I mean, literally, they didn't do a great job. The tackling was piss poor. Brandon Stevens, I'm just never been sold on him. I mean, he's little to no resistance on out routes. And then that's him getting burnt. I mean, Marlon Humphrey was probably and then Nate Wiggins, they were pretty much the only two that actually did their job. I mean, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of depth and physicality that we saw, from training camp. But Sunday, when I look back at the tape, I didn't see that. I saw this was remnants of 2 years ago where Joe Burrow threw for, was it 500 yards? And we got dubbed on the road. That we really have to be better at, and again, that's where I look at coaching. I'm going to hold them to that, and especially against Washington, they're definitely going to have to be on their P's and Q's. Now, in fairness, I'm gonna be nice. When it mattered, we got stops. The Marlon Humphrey interception was big, but you cannot I cannot defend T. Higgins and Jamar Chase combines 276 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is completely unacceptable.
And they have normalized this bullshit.
So, I was completely baffled by that because the defense I saw against Buffalo, that was not the defense I saw. And especially too, if you look, they kind of just picked their poison. I mean, and we brought in Yannick Ngakoue. That's not fixing anything. I mean, God bless him. I think he'll do better in this system. But I still think Zach Orr is still finding his way. I think he's trying to find what's working for him. And we just have to be better. But that was probably my biggest negative. Was just the pass rush, our defense. Got a couple fumbles. The biggest one, I'm not going to give Lamar too much because he didn't look at the ball when Lindelof snapped it. It happens. For the most part, guys did their job. But I'm going to move on to the positives. I'm going to start with Justin Tucker. Now, you've seen me do this last year when Younghoe Koo, everybody, because he was one field goal better last season percentage-wise than Justin Tucker. Now, Justin Tucker up until this game was 5 of 8. He had missed 2 from 50. Everybody was saying it was, and I have to go back and look at what I said. I may say the same thing, but somebody said it was on a podcast. He was looking like Matt Stover. He looks washed. We might need to think about moving on from him. And I'm looking, it's like when I look back at it, I'm sitting here going like, I fell for the trap. See, the problem is with Raven fans, we've depended on Justin Tucker to bail us out in so many situations. He's older. He's not he's not a robot. Like, are some of the field goals that he's missed, are they uncharacteristic? Sure. At one time, Greg Zuerlein was nicknamed Legatron. The same thing. It happens. But when you watch, he had 2 clutch field, especially the field goal to tie it to go into overtime. I mean, the most accurate kicker, especially these last 2 years, everyone was just like, what's going on with Justin Tucker? I mean, and then especially missing 6 of his last 7 catches for 50 more yards was since that's the beginning of the season. I mean, like I'm sitting here. I mean, the things people were saying, like almost to like they wanted him released, and it's like you have to. They gave him confidence. It was 1:35 left. Lamar, he fought an incomplete pass to Rashard Bateman. It was a 56-yarder. He made it. And then, I think some of it was mechanics. I think it was also probably, different things like that. And it got fixed. Because he was 2 of 5 from 40, but he had missed a 53, a 56, and a 46. And they were all right to the left. And then the same thing. The game-winning field goal after Derrick Henry ran it for 51 yards inside the 10-yard line. He's been from the stat, he's 109 of 109 inside the 30. And that was his 20th game winner of his career. So, I mean, I'm going to give him a game ball. He most likely deserves it. I just think is when you're confident and you give a player confidence, those are what I like to see. And, even John had mentioned it. Those are things we're going to continue to fix. Because, again, a lot of people forget when John Harbaugh was in Philadelphia, he was a special teams coordinator. That's one of the things he's emphasized since being the head coach. So, like, I'm glad that JT looked really good. And I'm proud of him for that. And again, no matter what, kickers are going to have bad games. I mean, Evan McPherson, he's going to get criticized for missing that potential game-winning field goal. But if you look, his holder, he muffled the snap. He had it happens. So shout out to Justin Tucker. My next key is our tight ends, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, but particularly the same guy who was drafted with Isaiah Likely, Mr. Charlie Kolar, excuse me. God, he looked fantastic. I have to give him, Mr. Charlie, a game ball. We already knew Isaiah was already known what he was going to do, but and especially I think when you look at the defenses, how do you defend against a guy like Isaiah Likely, who I think is built like a receiver? Most defenses know how to contain Mark Andrews, but Charlie, who had a 55-yard catch to get Isaiah Likely that touchdown. But if you've paid attention, now having 3 tight ends on the field, you're fine. That's kind of matching up problems for defenses. Like not only as pass catchers, but run blockers. Especially they have been essential to the run game. And then same thing. Mark Andrews. A lot of people have been questioning his productivity. Number one, he's coming off an injury. So guys are not going to be 100% coming off an injury. And soapbox moment. I appreciate Lamar coming to his defense because the one thing that bothers me today is, we're so inept of fantasy, sports betting, all those things. Well, he didn't do this right, so I lost out on $1,000 or I lost this week in fantasy points. At the end of the day, listen, these guys are human. You don't come back 100% off an injury. That's impossible. It's going to take time. We knew this, and he will find his groove. I'm not concerned about Mark Andrews. He made a couple plays, but I mean, especially at times when he was double teamed, that opened the field for others. Especially he found Zay Flowers. What was that? A 26-yard gain, and the same thing. I still think Mark Andrews, as will get involved in the game. I mean, Mark Andrews, 4 catches, 55 yards. Especially, he didn't have a catch the last 2 weeks, and that was when I looked at the stats, I was like, that was very telling. But I mean, overall, I mean, all 3 tight ends combined for 10 catches, 132 yards and 3 touchdowns. I have to give us some flowers for that. Fellas, let me find this. Now, for me, like I said, that creates more space for Rashad Bateman. He has 7 catches, 111 yards. Zay Flowers. And then Rashad Bateman had 4 catches or 58 yards and a touchdown. And especially Greg Roman was a very tight end friendly coordinator, but Todd Monken now has something definitely to work with this one. And my next Derrick Henry, especially, I wasn't concerned. Derrick Henry, I know for the most part, was definitely going to come in and do his thing. 100th career touchdown, now over 10,000 yards, 15 carries, 91 yards. It was, just a special guy. I'm really glad he's on this team. I know last year we tried to make it work to get him here, didn't happen. But for the most part, hey, did his thing. But more importantly, I have to give it to me. I have to give the game of the player of the game, and I think he should be. He should be in the conversation for MVP, and that's Mr. Lamar Jackson. Listen, Lamar. Actually, I have to pull this up. I saw this stat, and I was actually quite proud of this. Let me find it. And shout out to Sarah Ellison for these stats. If I can find it. Hold on, I'm looking for the stats. I saw this on X, and here it is. I'm sorry, it wasn't Sarah Ellison. My apologies. It was on ML Football. So Lamar is second in yards, second in adjusted YPA, third in net YPA, fourth in passing touchdowns, fourth in passing rating, fifth in QBR, fifth in yards per completion. If that's not putting her in the conversation for MVP, you're not watching football. I just think what he's been doing is, and especially how those first 2 weeks of the season panned. He stayed composed. He's been staying poised. He's had his moments of frustration, and that's normal. We all know he is a competitive quarterback. We know he has a high energy. His willingness to will his team to win, put the team on his back. We know those things. I want to address this. I heard this earlier today on a space on Twitter, and I found it kind of disingenuous. And I'm not being mean. I'm not throwing shade. I'm just speaking how I feel. I think to say that John Harbaugh doesn't hold Lamar Jackson accountable is I think that's disingenuous to say. First and foremost, I think we really need to break this mindset of holding every quarterback, whether they've been an MVP or not, to the Tom Brady's, the Peyton Mannings of the world. Those are different quarterbacks. They're in a different stratosphere. When you look at a guy like Lamar, you can make the same argument and ask yourself about Joe Flacco. Well, that year that Joe Flacco went down with his injury, the team was 4-5. Flacco even admitted after they beat this last week in oh my gosh, I can't remember who the Colts beat. My apologies. He even said it. I didn't want to go out. He knew he was hurt, but the team needed a spark. If if we're saying, well, we're coddling Lamar, you kind of can make the same argument we did that with Joe Flacco. But I think to sit there and say we're not holding him accountable when I'm seeing a guy, speaking how he feels, and even watching him in the Dallas game, even after, you see how visibly upset he was. You won the game, but why are we doing this? And then to sit and make to insinuate that those conversations are not being had, I have a problem with that. But the reason why I say that, because it kind of goes back to my point I made in the last video. We nitpick on every little thing that they don't do or they should do with Lamar. And it's like, well, is Jim Harbaugh holding Justin Herbert accountable? Is Sean McDermott holding Josh Allen accountable? Like, if that's the case, then that same logic can be applied to the other 32 NFL teams. Doug Peterson in Jacksonville with Trevor Lawrence. But let me get off on that. But let me get back to this. And especially when going into halftime, you know, I thought especially when you were down 10, Lamar took that Ravens team 92 yards and set up that touchdown pass to Charlie Kohler. And especially the next when they were down 38-28, the stiff arm pass, which I thought was that's still crazy how he got out of that. Sam Hubbard, shout out to Sam Hubbard. I know is looking back on the film and saying, how did he escape that? That's the second time I've seen him do that. I think he did that to Jadeveon Clowney. Maybe he did to someone against, we played Tampa, might have been Jacksonville, one of those things. But there were moments in the game where I'm sitting there going like, damn, you guys are not helping Lamar defensively. When they gave that 70-yard bubble screen pass to Jamar Chase, 31-28. Then Chris Kohler, he botched the kick return, went off out of bounds at the 8-yard line. Lamar, he fumbled that snap in overtime. Like, you just see a guy who, to me, who's making the plays. And for the most part, everybody's saying, well, that's what an MVP needs to do. Well, he's been reminding you the last 2 weeks why he's a 2-time MVP. If you look at the numbers and statistics, if the season ended today, he would have his third MVP. He's doing all the right things. The offense is gelling. You have to give him props. Has he had his moments this year? Yes. Some of that's on him. Some of that's on coaching. I'm not trying to be an apologist. I'm just speaking how I feel when it comes to Lamar. Now, on the flip side, Cincy, I'm not going to go the Chris Canty route. Let me say, like, I'm going to be perfectly clear on that. Now, I get it. Injuries definitely have played a factor, and I get it. But I still think your team will be okay. The offense is going to be fine. Not concerned with that. No, an offense with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins is going to be something. Dax Hill was out, and then Cam Taylor-Britt, he's been one game he's great, next minute he's cold. And then Darius Mims, he got carted off the field. I'm not sold on Cincy. I'm not being disrespectful. I just don't see anything. I mean, 75%, but I think, again, with a duo with Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, I mean, no one's going to sneeze on that. But, like, it's the team itself. When it mattered, I mean, you lost the game. You've lost 4 games by a total of 15 points. And I can't defend that. Not able to stop Jaden Daniels. And then the bad hold snap by Ryan Renko, you're finding different ways. I mean, your defense found a way to hold us to a field goal in that fourth quarter, and then you recover the snap. Good teams close games. Cincinnati, respectfully, they haven't found that. Even when you look, if I'm being honest, they kind of outplayed Baltimore in a sense, but Baltimore kind of found moments where they dug deep and did the same thing. Now if we'd have won, if they won, they'd be second place. And the Pittsburgh Steelers lost to that football team in Dallas, but now they're 1-4, and you're tied for last place with Cleveland. I don't. Again, I'm not. I picked them not to make the playoffs. I think they'll win 8 or 9 games, but some of it's on. I think some of it's Zach Taylor. Why you opted to run the ball 3 straight times from the 38-yard line made no sense. That was crazy. I mean, the clock wasn't a factor. I question that. I mean, if you got a sack or interception, that'd have been your game. I mean, Joe Burrow was on pace for 40 yards. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were cooking you. You should have given your playmakers an opportunity to win the game. You didn't do that. So, where's the clip?
I can't defend that. What do you want me to say to that?
He didn't even try.
So, I don't know what you want me to say on that. But yeah, other than that, for Baltimore, this win has meaning for me because number one, it was needed, and especially the way the AFC North so far has looked. I was not expecting Cleveland to look the way they looked. Pittsburgh, I still think Justin Fields needs to be the starter for me in Pittsburgh, but I know they're probably going to give it to Russell Wilson at some point. When you find yourselves at 0-2 and everybody was pretty much counting you out, and then Cincinnati's not 1-4, there's a lot of stuff they got to figure out, and especially there's a lot of to me, Cincinnati, they are a talented football team. I'm not being ignorant. I'm being honest. There's a lot of talent out there, but the position that they're in, I've said this before and I say it again. If you're trying to win for a championship, you got to make moves. And Cincinnati hasn't done anything to me that's been significant that's going to take them from here to here. Now, when you look at Cleveland, they got trounced by Washington, which we'll talk about in the next episode. There's a lot of things going on. And then Pittsburgh, where we had a late football game and we actually saw football for 2 days. No, I'm just kidding. And I think it's going to be. I still think Baltimore has a chance to win the AFC North. I'm going to push back and say they're going to win 10, 11 games now. I know I said at the beginning, they'll win the division. They'll probably win 9, 10 games. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Pittsburgh and Baltimore finish out the AFC North. There were a couple of things I wanted to also give out. For the most part, I saw the PFF grades this week were absolutely interesting, particularly on the defense side of the ball. Ronnie Stanley, the offense did pretty well, but for the defense, we really need to have a conversation about this. I was extremely disgusted. I think it was damn near, they were low. I can't remember. I'll find it. But as far as, I know what this was. I know what it was. So I saw a tweet, and shout out to Cole Jackson. He responded to this. To say Marcus Williams is a free agent bust, and again, no shade, I don't consider him. To me, he is not. He is not a bust. Injuries, for the most part, are the story. When you look at his PFF grade, it could be better. But when you say bust, there's other players throughout the years I can name at the top, literally, that I could say were bigger disappointments than Marcus Williams. Give him a chance. I thought he was a good free agent signing for us. But yeah, if I had to grade the defense, I mean, outside the key interception, I give it a C-, and that's being nice. Offense, when we made the plays, I give us a B+. So, hey, it's a great win. So I'm happy for us, and we get ready for the Washington Commanders, which we will talk about in the next episode. But I want to get into one final thought. I definitely want to bring up something I thought was very important, but we're going to take a quick little break, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back. My apologies.
Feeling too good to me, Chilling all day, all in your space is where I wanna be, Here in this room.
Thoughts are running through my mind. Someone took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
I love that song by Mr. Anthony Handy. One final thought is actually it has nothing to do with the Baltimore Ravens. It actually has to do with the New York Jets. Robert Saleh was fired as the head coach of the New York Jets. Personally, let me just say this: defensive minded coach. Respected what he's done. He's been with the Texans. He's been with the 49ers, with the Seahawks, Jacksonville, if I remember correctly. I know he's also a couple. I think there was like Michigan State. I think he was even at Georgia, and we were saying it was Central Michigan. No, he's from Michigan actually. First and foremost, I'm not happy that he got fired. First and foremost, Woody Johnson, as long as he's been owner of the New York Jets, I find that odd that you fire a coach mid-season. Now, personally, I have been on the record and I stand by this. I don't like when coaches get scapegoated. The moment Aaron Rodgers, they flew private jets out to California to get Aaron to recruit him to come play for the Jets, that's how I know a coach has no power. And I don't buy Aaron Rodgers didn't have a say. I don't buy that. That's bullshit. He did the same thing in Green Bay because for me, when Mike Tannenbaum, and this is how I know some guys really shouldn't be on TV. When he was blabbering a whole, I would tell Mike what Mike Tannenbaum was essentially. I would tell him to go have a conversation, and it was called out like, well, why can't you have that conversation? And then he just gave a BS answer. But my problem is the biggest question I have for everybody is who put this team together? When you look at that offense ain't built to win a championship. Now the defense is so he definitely put a stamp on that. They got better defensively. Offensively, Zach Wilson, was he the right pick for them? No. But everybody and their mom was like, if you just get a quarterback with that defense, Super Bowl. Period. You got the quarterback, and 4 plays into last year, got hurt. That offensive line was the biggest issue I had going into the season. I was never sold on the Jets. They're not built to win a championship. There are no excuses. Joe Douglas, seat should be hot. Aaron Rodgers should be held accountable. For me, they're not making the playoffs. I don't believe so. because now all of a sudden they've moved the goalposts and now are saying, go get another wide receiver. Well, wait a minute. He's practically got half his offense when he was in Green Bay. Alan Lazard now, he's not been the same. Garrett Wilson's supposed to be number one wide receiver. You think going out there and getting Devontae Adams, who, by the way, he could have stayed in Green Bay, but he chose to, and they were willing to match and pay him more money, but he chose to go to Vegas. What's that going to do? You got Breece Hall. You've got a stellar offense. That's not your quarterback. There should be no excuses. I feel bad for Robert Saleh. And then when you're hearing he was escorted off, I thought this was also kind of weird to hear there was a report that he was physically abused. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like something security would do. Now I have seen that and I've heard of that occurring where you are escorted off the premises by security, but they're never to physically harm you or anything like that. That's weird. That's in my experience of where I've worked. That's weird. But I'm disappointed. And especially my biggest question is you've never done that. To Woody Johnson, you've never done that. You've never fired a head coach mid-season, but you waited until after the London game to fire him. I find that suspect to me. So, and again, also too, respectfully, I'm not throwing shade on Robert, but I think he's more of a defensive-minded defensive coordinator. Nothing more, nothing less. That's being honest. Everybody's not built to be a head coach. Now they're talking about Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick ain't fixing that. He's not. I'm get off of it. But until it's known, Jet fans should boycott the games. They should not buy tickets. They should not show up. They should make their feelings known by every time you turn the camera, all you see are empty seats in the backfield. They don't deserve to watch this. They don't. Because how many more years you going to have games you're going to figure out? Maybe this wasn't Robert. Now the guy they got in here, I think his name. I know his name is Jeff something. My apologies if I didn't get his last name. My apologies. He was talked about as being a potential NFL head coach, candidate around the league a couple times last year. I see what it looks like. I've heard Todd Monken's name kind of been thrown in there. Todd Monken, if you're listening, don't take that job because you're going to get scapegoated. Look at Robert. I think you got something right here in Baltimore's office coordinator. Again, everybody's not a head coach. Everybody's not a coordinator. I feel bad for Robert. He knows football. I believe he'll get another job. Brian Flores got a job as defense coordinator. It's possible. Best wishes to him. I'm sorry he got put in a situation. The Jets suck. They're a dysfunctional organization, and I'm leaving it at that. Please like, comment, and subscribe for all future content. Thank you for tuning in this episode of Big Nate Sports Talk Podcast. And until then, I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace. Stay up.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode, be sure to like, subscribe, and share Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
And I want to thank you All I wanna do is say thank you for everything you do.